listen to my daddy's show. This is the Dino Costa Show. And it's on Mad Dog Radio.
The fundamental question that is faced by sports is, do they want, will the industry ever allow somebody to tell the truth on the air? But I don't think that today that will ever happen again. I don't think the industry will allow it.
Dino Costa.
It's Monday across North America and around the world, and you're listening to the worldwide Dino Costa radio experience on Siriusxm's Mad Dog Radio.
All right, let me get back into this hour number 2 on a Monday, the first of 5 award-winning and blockbuster endeavors here on Siriusxm's Mad Dog Radio. Cap, let's get rid of the music and get right to it here in hour number 2. And I'll get to your phone calls, 888-MAD-DOG-6, 888-623-3646. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to get to any phone calls in hour number 1. But a few things here before we welcome on some phone calls. And again, my biggest gripe, my outrage is in the fact that the National Football League has taken no action and has not seen fit to this point in time to issue any statement concerning the terrorist threat of the tweet that Victor Cruz sent out along with Tyrann Mathieu and also Roddy White, who told the jury to go home and kill themselves. The National Football League has a huge image problem on its hand. We know that. We're dealing with the Aaron Hernandez situation. Speaking of which, the Pouncey twins at their co-birthday party on this past Saturday in Miami wore hats that said "Free Hernandez." All of this stuff going on in the National Football League. And what is the commissioner doing? What is the National Football League commissioner doing? What have the New York Giants even issued a statement up to this point in time concerning Victor Cruz? And Cruz goes and lollygags his way onto the Dan Patrick Show earlier today, the Mike and Mike Show on ESPN. And, of course, both of them lather his balls as they welcome him onto the show, like the inclusion of Victor Cruz on Dan Patrick Show or the ESPN Mike and Mike Show is anything to, be proud of. That this guy's coming onto your show. So let's be nice to him. Let's be understanding. Let's put ourselves in his position. He called for the assassination of somebody on his Twitter account, an NFL high-visibility player playing with the most high-visibility team, perhaps, in the National Football League, and that's the New York Giants. Have the Giants themselves, Kaplan, I don't know if you've seen, have the Giants issued any statement at all concerning Victor Cruz?
No, not that I've seen.
I mean, that I find that almost impossible to believe. Impossible. And, there was a terrific piece today done on the American Spectator website, if you go there, by Robert Stacy McCain, how a Miami school crime cover-up policy led to Trayvon Martin's death. The Martin, if he had been dealt with as the juvenile delinquent that he was, as the young hood wannabe thug that he was, the chances of Trayvon Martin actually being in Sanford, Florida, the weekend that he was shot dead after attacking George Zimmerman probably wouldn't have ever happened. Both of Trayvon's suspensions during his junior year, reading from the story at Crop High School, involved crimes that could have led to his prosecution as a juvenile offender. Let's also get rid of this bullshit narrative. I mean, listen, they've circulated the little picture of Trayvon as a 12-year-old enough times to make you, to pull at your heartstrings enough. Some of you idiots who buy this shit, okay? All while, we can't show the real Trayvon as he started to become a young man. Anybody remember Trayvon's Twitter handle? Kaplan, can you get that for me so I can tell everybody? I forget what it was. Trayvon's Twitter handle. Listen, this wasn't a good kid. And this wasn't a story you're going to buy. I love this fairy tale that some of you have. He went to buy Skittles. He was coming home with Skittles. And he was blown away by somebody who was racially profiling. George Zimmerman, that bad man. How do you talk yourself into this crap? Both of Trayvon's suspensions, according to the story done by Robert Stacy McCain in the American Spectator, during his junior year at Crop High School involved crimes that could have led to his prosecution as a juvenile offender. However, Chief Charles Hurley of the Miami-Dade School Police Department in 2010 had implemented a policy that reduced the number of criminal reports, which in turn manipulated statistics To do what? To create the appearance of a reduction, to create the appearance of a reduction in crime within the school system. Less than 2 weeks before Martin's death, the school system commended Chief Hurley for decreasing school-related juvenile delinquency by an impressive 60% for the last 6 months of the school year 2011. What was actually happening, however, was that crimes were not being reported as crimes, but instead treated as disciplinary infractions, thus the skewered statistics that really were not accurate. In October of 2011, after a video surveillance camera caught Trayvon Martin writing graffiti on a door, police officer Darrell Dunn searched Martin's backpack looking for the marker he had used. Officer Dunn found 12 pieces of women's jewelry and a man's watch, along with a flathead screwdriver the officer described as a burglary tool. The jewelry and the watch, which Martin claimed he had gotten from a friend he refused to name, matched a description of items stolen during a October 2011 burglary of a house on 204th Terrace, about a half mile from the school. However, because of Chief Hurley's policy to lower the arrest rates, the stolen jewelry was instead listed as found property and was never reported to Miami-Dade police, who were investigating the burglary. Similarly, in February 2012, when a police officer caught Martin with a small plastic bag containing marijuana residue as well as a marijuana pipe, this too was not treated as a crime, and instead Martin was suspended from school. According to the story, either of those incidents could have put Trayvon Martin into the custody of the juvenile justice system. However, because of Chief Hurley's attempt to reduce the school crime statistics, according to sworn testimony, officers were basically told to lie and falsify reports. Martin was never arrested, but if he had been arrested, he might never have been in Sanford the night of his fatal encounter with Zimmerman. Now, let's understand something here. I know there's fairy tales that you like to believe about a little boy buying Skittles and minding his own business, and he was such a great kid, and all this other bullshit that has been spoon-fed to you as propaganda, which many of you, all too many of you, have swallowed and asked for seconds and thirds. Martin came after Zimmerman. Understand that. Martin came after Zimmerman. Martin was the aggressor. Martin was the aggressor. Okay? Witnesses say that Martin was the aggressor. Okay? The fact that Trayvon Martin and his death caused George Zimmerman to come within an inch of his life of going to jail for possibly 30 years, I found to be unconscionable, especially after the original incident report by the Sanford police showed that Zimmerman was acting in self-defense. All eyewitness accounts, all testimony, all ballistics, all forensics kept backing up who? Zimmerman, not Martin. Zimmerman, not. Now, I know that you don't want to believe this. I know you want to stick to your fairy tale. I know this was a sort of white guy blowing away a defenseless, unarmed teenager. But I'm here to tell you, if you believe that narrative and that poppycock, you are stupider than you're willing to admit. Stupider than you're willing to admit. If you lived in that community in which George Zimmerman did and the confrontation with Trayvon Martin that ended his life, Victor Cruz, if you lived in that community, you would have been thanking George Zimmerman, as many of the people in that community went on to thank George Zimmerman afterwards. Why? Because conveniently left out of your poppycock story, your fairy tale that you want to invent about a little kid who went to buy Skittles and got blown away by some evil sort of white guy. Conveniently you forget, or you just don't want to know, that there were at least 8 burglaries in the 14 months before Zimmerman's encounter with Martin. Numerous media accounts, if you take the time to do some investigating on your own, numerous media accounts admit that most of these were committed by black males within that community. I'm still waiting to hear about a burglary in the Twin Lakes complex where the alleged criminal was not a black male. Now, I just gave you Robert Stacey McCain and a few things from him concerning how if the police department had done its job and they had dealt with Trayvon Martin in a different manner, that Trayvon Martin may not have been in Sanford, Florida the night that he was killed. I now refer you to a story done by The Bitch, Ann Coulter, who says 6 months before Zimmerman's encounter with Martin, 2 men had broke. Why would you have been proud of George Zimmerman? Well, I just told you 8 burglaries in the 14 months before that. Let me read from Ann Coulter's story. Just 6 months before Zimmerman's encounter with Trayvon Martin, 2 men had broken into the home of a neighbor, Olivia Bertolin, while she was alone with her infant son. She had just enough time to call 911 before running upstairs, locking herself in a room. The burglars knew she was home, but proceeded to rob the place anyway, even trying to enter the locked room where she held her crying child. Bertolin had seen the burglars just before they broke into her house, one at the front, one at the back. They were young black males. They lived in the retreat by Twin Lakes. In another case, a black teenager strode up to Zimmerman's house and in broad daylight stole a bicycle off the front porch. The bike was never recovered. Weeks before Zimmerman saw Martin, he witnessed another young black male peering into the window of a neighbor's house. He called the cops, but by the time they arrived, the suspect was gone. A few days later, another house was brought. This is the same community, folks. The same community. He should have just gotten back in his car. Bullshit. And if it were me, I wouldn't have got back in my car. Especially in light of all of the rap sheet I'm reading you here. This place was being picked off every other weekend. A few days later, another house was burglarized. The thieves made off with jewelry and a new laptop. Roofers working across the street had seen 2 black teenagers near the house at the time of the robbery. When they spotted one of the teens the next day, they called the police. This time, though, the roofers followed the suspect so he wouldn't get away. The cops arrived and found the stolen laptop in his backpack. This was the same black teenager that Zimmerman had seen looking in a neighbor's window. If I lived there, I would have thrown a fucking party for Zimmerman. And anybody else looking out for my community. This is the world we live in, where we're roasting and toasting and broiling over the very people that are seeking to protect our homes and property and the very lives of the people that live there. Maybe in your world, not in mine. Never in mine. Now, last thing I'll give you here before I go to your phone calls. You say, what if the races were reversed? I'm glad you mentioned that. Let me preface by saying that if the races were reversed, I'd be saying that George Zimmerman got everything that he had coming to him as someone who went after and attacked, circled back for Trayvon Martin. In the instance and in the hypothetical that George Zimmerman was the aggressor. You come at me, and I love this thing. He was unarmed. He used the pavement and the curb on the sidewalk well enough to smash Zimmerman bloody. But I'm glad you said, what if the situation was reversed? Because Coulter in her story narrates the reverse. Real life, not hypothetically. She writes that in 2006, a man by the name of John White, I didn't know about this till I read this. In 2006, a man by the name of John White was sound asleep at his nice Long Island home when his teenage son woke him to say that there was a mob of white kids shouting racial epithets in front of the house. John White, ironically, was black. The family was in no imminent danger. They could have called 911 and remained safely behind locked doors. But White, who was black, grabbed a loaded Beretta and headed out to the end of the driveway to confront the mob. A scuffle ensued, and White ended up shooting one of the kids in the face, killing him. Convicted only of illegal weapons possession and involuntary manslaughter, White, who is black, was sentenced to 20 months to 4 years in prison, but after serving 5 months was pardoned by Governor David Patterson. The public was overwhelmingly on the father's side, a fact that, according to Coulter, is still evident in internet postings about the case. The kids were punks menacing a law-abiding homeowner. The local NAACP had campaigned aggressively on White's behalf. There were no threats to riot in the case of an acquittal. John White was not jumped, was not knocked to the ground, was not repeatedly punched, and his skull knocked against the ground repeated times. In fact, as Ann Coulter writes, John White wasn't even touched, though he did claim that the white teen was lunging at him. You know what I say? I say the white teen got what was coming to him. That's what I say. Let me say that again. The black man shot the white teen in the face. Do you know what I say? The white teen got what was coming to him. Just in case there's a question of my own intentions and morality, to let you know where I stand. Somebody threatens you. Now listen, White was not threatened, according to the report that I just read. White was not physically accosted, as Zimmerman was. But he shot the kid anyway, and I'm glad he did. I'm glad he did. Witnesses say that Martin was the aggressor. Zimmerman had the numerous injuries on his head. Zimmerman had the numerous injuries on his face. Zimmerman had grass stains on the back of his jacket. Besides the gunshot wound, folks, the only thing that Martin had was bruised knuckles. And you want to talk about backgrounds? Look into both the backgrounds of the two individuals who were in this case. Zimmerman, almost as clean as a whistle. Martin on his way to jail. Zimmerman's background has been about fairness. Zimmerman has advocated previous for the justice of a black homeless man killed by what he thought was police brutality. Let me read that again. Zimmerman advocated for the justice of a black homeless man killed by what he thought was police brutality. He and his wife, Zimmerman's wife, tutored minorities for free. He aspired to become a judge, and he always did his best as the neighborhood watchman to the best of his ability, I'll say. Trayvon Martin was a thug who was on his way to bigger thug things. Let's be clear here. Don't insult. Please don't insult me. Whatever you do, don't insult me. I beg that of you. Whatever you have to say, don't insult me. Okay? Do not insult me. And I'll say it for the last time. If I lived in that neighborhood, if you lived in that neighborhood, with the rash of break-ins, burglaries, threats, all that stuff, George Zimmerman did his due diligence. Roofers followed one of the guys that eventually they caught. And so too did George Zimmerman. I don't give a fuck who told me to stay in my car. I think I finally got one of these motherfuckers that's been jacking up my neighborhood and taking other people's property, my property, and putting our lives in danger, and you think I'm going to sit in my fucking car? Fuck you. Fuck you. That ain't happening. I ain't built that way. It ain't in my DNA. It's in your DNA? Fine. I say you're a coward. To the calls. Oh, by the way, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. Trayvon Martin's Twitter handle, No Limit Nigga. What a cute guy. What a cute little kid. To the phones I go. And let me go to Chris in Shreveport, Louisiana to start it off. Hour number 2 on this July the 15th. Hi, Chris. Welcome to the show.
Hey, brother.
Hi.
All I can do is say thank you. I've been a patron of Sports Talk Radio for a while, and I've kind of listened to another station more often than yours. But, brother, you've got a follower. this is what I have to say. Everything that's been going on for the last 2 days is nothing but about the black-white issue, and for one side or another. And I live in a neighborhood where the same thing could happen.
The same thing happens all over the place. Let me tell you something. If my neighborhood was being jacked up left and right by burglaries, break-ins, and stuff like that, and some guy was looking out for me and said, you know what, no, I'm not going to stay in the car. I'm sick of this bullshit. If I can find this guy, I'm going to find him, and I'm going to ID him because, you know what, we're tired of being robbed. We're tired of living in fear. We're tired of having our stuff stolen, and I'm going to do my best as a concerned citizen to look out for the rest of my citizenry that lives in and around this neighborhood. I'd buy that guy a dinner, a cigar, and whatever drink he wanted.
We have a neighborhood website page. And all they do is they talk. They talk. And when somebody mentions somebody walking down the street, it's brought up as an issue. And the problem that I have is if it's an issue, it's an issue. Do you agree? I mean, if there's something different, there's something different. And I'm sorry, but Mr. Zimmerman was found not guilty. Everybody's angry about it. They don't need to be angry about it. What they need to do is figure out what has to be changed. And
listen, Chris, there were what was the number that I had here before? There were 20. What was it here? I wrote it down before because you want to. I mean, for anyone who brings this up as a racial profiling case or a racial black-white case, I mean, it just absolutely. I mean, as reckless and irresponsible as even Victor Cruz was. How many kids were killed over 4th of July weekend in the city of Chicago? All of them black, by the way. Killed by fellow blacks. Where's the outrage there? Where's the media coverage there? Where's the president there? Where are the Miami Heat taking a photo there? Where? Are the lives of the 20-some-odd kids who were killed over 4th of July weekend in Chicago, are they worth anything less than the life of Trayvon Martin? Why the difference? I think you know why. Shame on you. Shame on you. And it's not Zimmerman that should have been put on trial. It's the maggot-infested cesspool media in this country that should have been put on trial. That's who should have been put on trial. The president should have been put on trial for the way that he rocked the waters in this case, saying what he did. Todd is in Madison, Wisconsin, USA, on the Dino Costa Show, Hour 2 on a Monday. Todd.
Hey, Dino. I also want to thank you. I needed an honest discussion. The last couple of days have just been, just brutal, Dino.
I've seen
one
it.
thing that separates us. Now, I'm a liberal Democrat, Dino, but and I'm a gun owner, so I just want you to know that there are people on the other side of the aisle, Dino, that back you 100% on this.
There's no. There's a lot of people that feel exactly like I do, and there are even people that are in the media that feel like I do, but they won't say it because they have racial manners. And they don't want to be seen as a villain. I know I'm so ferocious for breaking this down the way that I have, for seeing it the way I do. Okay? I wouldn't have cared if George Zimmerman was white, black, half Spanish, polka dot green, or blue with white stars all over him. If he had been looking out for my community that had been rocked with robberies and break-ins consistently over a 14-month stretch, I would have gone over, I would have shaken his hand, and I would have said, how can I help you? In this bullshit, he should have stayed in the car. No. He shouldn't have stayed in the car. He did the right thing as far as I'm concerned. The right thing. And by the way, he had lost sight of Trayvon Martin. Martin came at him from a blind side. And attacked him unprovoked. All witness testimony backs him up. That the fact that this even got into a courtroom is sickening to me. Sickening. Patrick is in Washington, D.C. on the Dino Costa Show, Hour 2 on a Monday. Patrick.
Hello, Dino. How you doing?
Hi.
I just called because I was just turning on the radio, and I was actually thinking about the sports bet between Meta World Peace being picked up by the Knicks. But I was very interesting that I caught a tail end of your statement with regard to you would have taken Joyce Zimmerman and shook his hand, taken him out to dinner, and so forth. I guess the concern I have is that the reality of it is you're saying there's eyewitness testimony, but the reality is there was no eyewitness testimony. There was a speculation and there was a picture that was drawn that stated that this is what occurred, and it was a story that was painted by the defense. Now, I agree with you that, yeah, if someone's looking out for my neighborhood, you have absolutely the right to, to formulate these neighborhood watches, 100%. I have a neighborhood, I have a house, and if someone was in my neighborhood, yes, I would actually do the same thing. Would I have gotten out of the car? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. In D.C., probably not, because there is a lot of illegal guns in this community.
A lot of black crime there, yes.
Well, there's a lot of black crime here, but
right.
I mean, there's a lot of crime throughout the United States.
Right, but I mean, the disproportionate amount of crime done in Washington D.C. is overwhelmingly black. Who are we kidding?
Yeah, and in black neighborhoods. The concern that I have though about this particular case though is that you said that the evidence points to him blindsiding him. That's not actually an evidence. That's an account that was portrayed by the defense in order to defend his actions. Now, I understand that this case is I heard you say something about it's not racially motivated. If you had Patrick,
no. If you had to guess based upon the backgrounds of the two individuals, who was the aggressor in this case? Who would you have thought would have been the aggressor in this case?
Who do I think was the aggressor?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know who's the aggressor, and the reason I don't know is because there was an altercation. If this was if there had not been a gun involved, there would have been a street fight.
Wait a second, hold on. You're presuming that Zimmerman took his gun out at the very get-go.
No. I don't know if he did that. I'm just trying, based upon the facts that I saw, it's I don't see it as possible where an individual's laying on top of you with both arms, covering your face, and then punching you, can also go for your gun, which is one of the statements that he said. I don't know how you can do that. I don't know how you can reach underneath of your jacket, which is a three-quarter length red and gray jacket, and pull out your gun from a position where the individual is straddled over top of you. I don't know how you can do that. Now, if you can show me, if you're in a fight and you are getting hit in the face or your mouth is getting covered, I don't know how you're actually reaching for a gun, because for me, if I'm in a fight, I'm trying to make sure that I can breathe and I'm trying to protect myself from getting hit. But let's say that isn't the case. How do I get a gun from the back part of where I'm sitting, where I'm being laid upon, and then am I able to draw the gun out? Those are the situations that I'm looking at. And so when you sit up here and say it's not racially motivated, I mean, he had a right to be there. So
I didn't say he didn't have. I didn't say he did not have a right to be there. I said he had a right to. I never said that. He had a right to be there. I never said he didn't have a right to be there. Who said that? I didn't say that. I said that I would have shaken George Zimmerman's hand for looking out for my benefit. It is what I would have done. Houston, Texas. Naomi's on the Dino Costa Show. Hi, Naomi.
Hey, Dino. How you doing? I wanted to make a comment. I'm listening to your story, and I kind of got into following the trial a little late in it because I wasn't that into it, because I figured, sooner or later the truth will come out and we'll deal with it. The only problem I have with what you're saying right now is that you want to talk about Victor Cruz advocating going out and taking the law into his own hand by the comment that he made on his Twitter, which I totally think was ignorant to say. He should not have said that, being in the position he is. But then you turn around and say it's okay for Zimmerman to get out of his car and chase down someone that's walking down the sidewalk.
Well, when you say chase down, but the difference is when you say chase down, you act, these people that, he chased him down. Like he got out of his car and he ran after Trayvon Martin and he tackled him and he brought him to chase. He wanted to know where he was going. He was walking after him. He was looking for his whereabouts. That's what happened. Okay, and if Victor Cruz had been attacked unprovoked by someone else, Victor Cruz had every right, everybody would have every right to defend themselves, and if they felt their life was in danger, to use deadly force. Yes. Yes. Jerry's in Louisville, Kentucky. Hi, Jerry.
Tino, great show as always. Love your opinion. I want to share something. My nephew was in Fallujah at the height in Iraq, and he never really spoke much about it. But this weekend, he actually opened up, and he told a little story. And he said, He said maybe this is a bad analogy, but he said, I'm going to tell you what happened to me. He said, we are, a little company of Marines in what they called a police block, and there was about 12 of us, and there was enough room for 10. And he said every night we had 4 corners and we had 4 watches. And he said this one kid, they had a curfew. This one kid at night would kind of circle around. But during the day he was friendly, but at night he was always walking around. And it was the same kid. They knew about what he was wearing. He said on one particular night, this kid came within the boundary, and he said, it was about 50 yards, buffer zone. And he said the guy to his left told him, he said, stop, halt. He said, stop, or I'm going to shoot. And this kid kept on saying, I have nothing. He had his hands up in the air. Finally, he said they let him get within about half of the boundary, and he said the guard to his left shot him dead. He said the entire community the next day were ready to kill every one of them. He said they had to have somebody come in and get them, somebody to come out. They had to abandon the block. And he said the thing about it was, he said that kid was not armed. But guess what? That kid was the one that was making the fucking suicide bombs.
Well, listen, okay, it's an interesting story, but the notion that some of you have that you cannot use a firearm if someone else does not have a firearm as well is patently absurd. Who are you kidding? This kid was a bad kid. This kid was headed down all the wrong roads. Look at the background of Zimmerman. Look at the background of Trayvon Martin. But more importantly to me, look at the NFL. And can you hear that? Can you hear that cone of silence? That's coming from the National Football League over Victor Cruz, over the Pouncey boys wearing the free Hernandez hats at their co-birthday party this past Saturday night in Miami, Florida. That cone of silence you hear from the NFL. Have the Atlanta Falcons made an official statement concerning Roddy White? No, I didn't think so. Certainly the NFL hasn't. And for Naomi down there in Houston saying that I advocated for Zimmerman to get out of his car and of course, speaking out against Victor Cruz and the hostile tweets that he sent out, indeed, there is a huge difference between the two. Zimmerman was acting on behalf of his community, and by the way, let's not forget, as someone who was personally affected by a robbery in that community. The jury weighed in; they found him not guilty. Thank God for that, by the way. Thank God, because in my estimation, an innocent man would have gone to prison. An innocent man. If somebody attacks Victor Cruz like that in the middle of the night in an environment that had been subjected to crimes consistently in the 14 months prior leading up to that very fateful night, then Victor Cruz had every right, especially if someone was on top of him, bashing his head into the pavement, bashing his head into the damn curb to protect himself. And if he felt his life was in danger, absolutely and positively would I advocate the use of deadly force. Completely and totally. Steve is in Atlanta, Georgia. He's on the Dino Costa Show. Hi, Steve.
Dino, how you doing?
Hi.
You touched on something earlier. I wanted to give you a little clarification on it. Chicago, 4th of July weekend. 12 people were killed. 64 were wounded. A 5- and a 7-year-old boy were shot.
Black or white?
Chicago. Black.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, where's our president? Where's Eric Holder? Where's whatever now?
Because it's not politically expedient for them to weigh in on that. Don't you understand it? For the same reason why Al Sharpton secretly and anonymously loved the fact that Trayvon Martin and the killer was freed and found not guilty. That is excellent news for the Al Sharpton business. Excellent news.
Let me give you another stat I read today. Since this event happened and since the moment the verdict was read, 11,000 black-on-black murders have occurred in the United States. Over 11,000. That's a startling number.
It's staggering. Where's the outrage, though?
Where is it?
Where's Victor Cruz tweeting about that?
Right. Let me tell you what happened in Atlanta on July 2nd. A 38-year-old man was pumping gas outside of Atlanta. He was attacked by 4 black teenagers who were reputed to be in a gang. They beat him to a pulp. They chased him into the road where he got hit by a car and killed. Where's the news? Nobody in Atlanta has even heard about the story. One station covered it.
What about down in your neck of the woods several weeks ago, a story that I didn't want to hear about anymore because it personally destroyed my insides. The kid who walked up to the mother demanding money. If she didn't give him money, he'd kill the little infant in the stroller, and he blew the little baby away?
Yep.
Well, what about that?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, it was a black kid who shot the baby. Black
exactly.
kid. Right.
Exactly. And here's one more point, and I'll get off the phone because I know you got a lot of callers. If Victor Cruz and Roddy White were white athletes, and they said this about a conviction
right.
that they didn't agree with, they'd be out of football.
Absolutely. Oh, my. I said that earlier today. If Victor Cruz was white, if Roddy White was, if they were white, and they had made these kinds of tweets, reversed the situation, the NFL would have come down on them like stink on shit big time. They would have been roasted and toasted and broiled in the press by the white liberal sports media in this country to no end. To no end. And you know what we'd be talking about right now? Well, obviously we've got a racist problem in the NFL. That's what we'd be talking about. That is what would be being reported. Baltimore, Maryland. USA, Brandon is on the Dino Costa Show. Hi, Brandon.
Hey, Dino. Thank you for taking my call. I got a lot to say. I'm going to try to be quick. It's first of all about the tweets for Rodney White and Victor Cruz and everybody else who called for the assassination, as you put it, of Zimmerman are assholes, and you are exactly right about that. It wasn't right what they did, and they don't represent most of the black community. At least
I don't think they do either.
Okay. Number 2, as far as let me explain why they tweeted that, and I'm not advocating it was fucking wrong, and they just fucking assholes for doing it. But I mean, there's so many injustices of young black males around the country that it kind of like boils over, and they irresponsibly tweet things like that. So maybe that's just why they did it. Not saying it was right. Number 2, it's incumbent on the police department of that community. If it was 14 break-ins or how many other break-ins that were in that community, it's incumbent on the police department to do something about that, not the neighborhood watch. Honestly, nobody really knows what happened that night, and I don't want to get into, if he's a racist or anything like that, because honestly, nobody really knows. But if you follow procedure, what you were supposed to do, if you stay in your car and call the police, then maybe this incident doesn't happen. And I'm a young black male, and I was born in Baltimore, and I'm not going to try to sit here and paint Trayvon as a innocent kid and not a thug. Was he a thug? I don't know. Was his life headed down the right path? No, I'll give you that. But if Zimmerman stays in his car, then
Well, I understand. No, and that's something Brandon people have brought up repeatedly. It's something I don't buy. It's something that I don't buy. Okay, Zimmerman didn't stay in his car, and I wouldn't have stayed in my car. I can't speak for anybody else, but I wouldn't have stayed in the car, especially if I had been personally affected by a burglary. Somebody comes up in broad daylight, steals a bike off my front porch in the middle of the day. Hey, you're being a little too brazen for my liking. Okay, if you'll do that in broad daylight, what the hell will you do when the lights are turned down and the sun goes down? What will you do then? So I applaud Zimmerman for following or trying to track the whereabouts of the person that eventually became known as Trayvon Martin. Charles is in Detroit. Hi, Charles.
Hey, Dino, how you doing?
Well.
Good. Hey, just real quick, just to tag along with the last gentleman asked, I guess my question, and I appreciate the points everybody's bringing because I don't know a lot about this case. My question is, was it legal? Was it legally right for Mr. Zimmerman to leave when he was told by the police?
Yes, he did not. Yes. The answer to your question is he did not break a law. No.
If it was legal for him,
he didn't. I just got done telling you he didn't break a law. No.
Okay, then I guess he was within his rights to go ahead and kill the guy because it sounds like that was my only question.
Well, he wasn't within his rights, but Charles, he wasn't within his rights to kill the guy until the guy came after him and attacked him and started savagely beating his head into the damn pavement and the curb. Have you seen the picture? By the way, have you seen the pictures of Zimmerman? Could you imagine? Do this. Imagine Zimmerman clean. And imagine Trayvon Martin with the injuries, the blood, the bloodied lip, the broken nose, the cuts and scrapes all over his damn face. Imagine Trayvon Martin and the pictures come out. Now, could you imagine? Have you seen the pictures of Zimmerman? I know you've seen the 12-year-old Trayvon Martin looking like an angel, which is the picture that they continue to distribute every single day. But let's hypothetically look at the fact of maybe Zimmerman having sustained the same injuries that were applied to him, but he applied them to Trayvon Martin. Okay? There was one thing with Trayvon Martin, a bullet hole. That was it. That was it. No more. Oh, and his bruised knuckles. Brown, Delaware, USA Charles again on the Dino Costa Show. Hi, Charles.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. First of all, I want to just say, for me, it's not a black and white thing. And personally, George Zimmerman is no more white than I am. I'm a black male. I also want to say that, in my opinion, I think what Zimmerman did was wrong. I feel like all the evidence that was presented has been misconstrued, especially by Mr. Zimmerman. I don't know exactly what happened that night, except for the fact that a young guy was killed.
Wait a minute. Well, let's stop here. You just got done saying that you don't know what happened that night.
Except for the fact that a young man was killed.
But you said before that you believe that the information given was misconstrued, I think is the word you used.
I'll tell you why.
Well, please, I'm wondering because you just said you don't know what happened that night. Go ahead.
This is what I'm going to tell you. I think it was misconstrued. Because if someone is screaming and hollering for help, usually it's not the person with the gun. And when the shot goes off, there's no more screaming and hollering for help, because at that point, the one that was screaming and hollering is dead.
So how do you account for? So let me get this right. The guy that was screaming and hollering for help had no facial marks, no head injuries, and bruised knuckles, and he's the guy screaming for help.
Usually the person where I'm from. Usually the person
where you're from. I didn't think about down there in Brown, Delaware, over there in Brown, Delaware, right. The person that's screaming for help, I see. So the person screaming for help was Trayvon Martin, not the guy who was bloodied, not the guy whose head was all busted up, not the guy whose nose was broken, lip was bloodied, the clean guy, the guy who had no facial marks, no head injuries, only swollen hands and knuckles. He was the guy screaming for help. I see. Okay. Well, down over there in Brown, Delaware, I understand that. All right. Eric's in Los Angeles, California. Hi, Eric.
Dino.
Yep.
How you doing, man? I got one question I want to ask you, and that's it.
Sure.
What is the purpose of calling 911 in the first place and listening to the police if you're not going to do what they tell you to do? If you decide that you want to use vigilante justice by getting out your car and
no, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're assuming that when he got out of the car, it was his intent to hunt down Trayvon Martin and shoot him dead. That you said, wait, somebody gets out of the car with the intention of using vigilante justice. I don't believe any of that. What was in the mind of George? The last thing that George Zimmerman ever thought would happen when he stepped out of that car was that the person that he was eyeing, that he saw, who then he lost track of, eventually was going to end up dead on the front lawn somewhere. Okay, the last thing. Put yourself in his position. Put yourself in George Zimmerman's position. Your community has been ransacked. It's the middle of the night. It's dimly lit. You've got a guy on top of you that is pounding away at you. Okay? Slamming your head into the pavement, into the curb. You know, they've been brazen enough to walk up and steal a bicycle off the front porch in broad daylight. What could possibly make George Zimmerman think that perhaps, I mean, aside from the pictures of the evidence, which show clearly he was beaten to a pulp, what could make George Zimmerman feel as though his life might have been threatened? Oh, I don't know. Maybe you can tell me. Nueva Mexico, and Mark is on the Dino Costa Show on this Monday. Hi, Mark. Hi, Mark.
How you doing, brother?
Hi.
Hey, I got a couple of things. First of all, would you say the president is white African-American or African-American? Because when I first heard this, and NBC and all these people, they were changing and coloring pictures, and I guess they doctored up some tapes, and a few people got fired for it. The whole issue is tragic. A child did lose his life. But I applaud George Zimmerman now that I looked at all the evidence, because at first I was thinking that Zimmerman was like a white on black crime, but it was a Latino on a black crime. And Reverend Al, they all jump on the plane, and Jesse Jackson, but they don't do it on the other hand if the white person's the victim. You know, it's just...
This is Mark. This is all good news. This is great for the Jesse business. This is great for the Reverend Al business. This is great for that business. The Black Panther part. This is good for business that George Zimmerman was acquitted and found not guilty. By the way, whenever the NFL decides to get around to issuing any kind of a statement concerning Victor Cruz or Roddy White or the Pouncey brothers, the Pouncey twins, advocating for the release of Aaron Hernandez, somebody let me know. When the commissioner decides to speak, when the Pittsburgh Steelers issue a release, especially with the way that they railroaded and went after one of their own before, Ben Roethlisberger, show me when the Steelers are going to go after Pouncey, when the Dolphins are going to go after his brother, the twin Pouncey, and when the NFL is going to go after every one of these guys, and the Giants are going to say something about Victor Cruz, and the Falcons are going to say something about Roddy White, and the Arizona Cardinals are going to say something about Tyrann Mathieu. When? Let me know when the release comes across. Please. Peter's in Long Island, New York. Hi, Peter.
Hey, Dino. How are you?
Good, Pete.
Good. All I can say is you got the best radio show on the national, on the airways right now. I wake up every morning sad to be part of this society, the hypocrisy that we live in. I just want to say thank you for preaching the truth, and you got a follower for the rest of your life, man. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, thanks for your call. Columbia, South Carolina. John is on the Dino Costa Show. Hi, John.
Hey, Dino, thank God somebody is finally asking the tough questions and answering the tough questions. My only question is one forward. I'm a dad, I'm a parent, and if my son was being followed by somebody, I'd want him to call the cops. So why didn't Trayvon call the cops that night? All that would have been solved. Nothing would have happened.
Well, because I guess he was more concerned with talking with his friend. I don't know, the illiterate girl who went up on the stand, who really did a horrible job in trying to convince people that Trayvon Martin was somehow a victim in this whole thing. Trayvon was on the phone with her and apparently was more interested in telling her about the creepy-ass cracker that he saw following him that evening. So that's what Trayvon was interested in. Back with more Hour 2 right after this.
He's stubbornly uncorrupted, and his only loyalty is to those who listen to him. The worldwide Dino Costa radio experience, right here on SiriusXM's Mad Dog Radio.
I mentioned off the top during the show today, during the first couple minutes of the first hour, that Bud Selig was on Mad Dog Radio today with Chris Russo. And just a clip that Kaplan sent me earlier today. I'll get to it in hour number 3. You can see again, Selig is a total and complete farce. He's a liar. He's a phony when it comes to the game of baseball and the way that he answers questions. One question and answer in specific got my attention. Also, I guess the Victor Cruz thing, the media had a huge love-in with Victor Cruz today, and it extended to SiriusXM radio and the NFL channel we have here with Bob Papa and Ross Tucker, who do a show. I'll get to that and back to the Dan Patrick love-in with Victor Cruz. Got to handle this very sensitively, you know. We got to really build up Victor here, lather his balls, make him feel comfortable, you know. This is a guy that just called for the outright killing of George Zimmerman over the weekend, but let's welcome him on the show. If Bob Papa or Ross Tucker or Dan Patrick, if I called for their outright killing with a Twitter post, do you think they would welcome me onto the show with such a, effusive praise, all flowery and happy and smiley faces? Somehow I think not. Tim is in Stanton, Virginia, USA. Hi, Tim.
Hey, Dino. Thank you for taking my call. It's all about perspective, and it's all about money. Urban Meyer, who let 47 of his players be arrested and still remain on the team, he's all about his record and winning and not about character development. He just doesn't develop his players and any character. It's just about winning, and it carries on into the pro system, and it's about the bottom line. Nobody cares about anything. They pay these guys millions of dollars to attract sponsors and dollars, and yet they pay our veterans minimum wage to give their lives to our country.
Right.
And then
Tim,
they come home.
Yes, Tim, I got to run. I got to go. I'm sorry, but I'm short on time. 2 hours in, 2 to go. The Dino Costa Show on Siriusxm's Mad Dog Radio on a Monday.